When Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney swapped some S's for Z's in a federal budget document, it wasn't the first time a politician was called out for poor spelling. He joined the ranks of former US Vice President Dan Quayle and former UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in making a memorable spelling gaffe. But instead of being roasted in late-night monologues or social media posts, Mark Carney got an open letter from language experts telling him he was undermining the Canadian identity. Carney, who worked in the United Kingdom for many years, was using the British spelling of words like utilize and emphasize. The letter admonished Carney and the Canadian government to return to using standard Canadian English. But if a leader of a country doesn't set the standard for that country's language, who does make the rules? Is there some secret society with capes and swords making official decisions about the language we all use? Well, in some cases, literally yes. So let's talk about how they actually standardize language and why they want to regulate it at all. I'm Dr. Erica Brozovsky, and this is Otherwords.
Otherwords.
If you're an American English speaker, the idea of an official government institution making rules and regulations around language seems a little weird. Imagine if along with the IRS and the DMV, there was the Office of Elocution, telling you not to use that new word you picked up from an internet meme. But for many languages around the world, there are formal institutions that try to regulate language from word choice, to grammar, to yes, even spelling. So what are these language regulators trying to do? Well, if you ask the notoriously stodgy Académie Française, their mission is to defend the French language and make it pure, eloquent, and capable of dealing with the arts and sciences. And pure is a pretty loaded word there. The Académie Française is an exclusive group of 40 notable literary figures and scholars in France. The average age of their members is in the 70s, and they have some old-fashioned tendencies to match. The Academy is known for being resistant to incorporating loanwords from other languages into French, so part of their work is coming up with French equivalents when new words are needed. Instead of email, which Dutch speakers call e-mailen, and Urdu speakers call email, the Académie Française recommends the word courriel. But these top-down pronouncements aren't always successful. While the authorities insisted that wireless internet is called l'accès sans fil à l'internet, most French people just say le Wi-Fi. Many language regulators are trying to navigate the challenge of standardizing and modernizing language at the same time. The Iceland's Personal Names Committee, for example, regulates an official list of baby names that can be used in Iceland. While new names can be added, the committee tries to standardize them to spellings that use only the Icelandic alphabet. The name Kara might be standardized as Kara, because Icelandic doesn't include the letter C. But as people immigrate to Iceland, bringing with them traditional names from their home countries, the Personal Names Committee has had to become a bit more flexible. And some legislators have proposed dissolving the naming committee altogether for being too restrictive. But the purpose of language standardization isn't always to prevent a language from changing. After the Ho-Chunk people in Wisconsin underwent decades of forced assimilation in English-only boarding schools, their language was in danger of disappearing. The nation estimates that there are only about 40 native speakers living today. So, with the goal of revitalizing Ho-Chunk as a living language, the Ho-Chunk Nation established a governmental language division. That organization recorded elders and created an online dictionary featuring recordings of native speakers pronouncing Ho-Chunk words. They developed curriculum for classes that can be taken either through an app or in area schools, and even established an immersion daycare center to introduce the language to a new generation. These efforts to save Ho-Chunk represent the more urgent end of the mission that many language regulators share, to protect a language and promote its use, in order to preserve all the history, culture, and identity encoded within it. But what happens when a language isn't regulated? Despite being spoken by 1.5 billion people around the world, English has no formal regulating body to poo-poo prime ministers or announce formal translations of gamer slang. But there are plenty of organizations that standardize the language on a smaller scale. If you're a journalist, you may refer to the Associated Press Style Book, which tries to standardize spelling, grammar, and even conventions on how to refer to certain subjects across news media, which can influence how consumers of that media use language themselves. Or if you're trying to understand how the language has changed over time, you could look at the Oxford English Dictionary, which tracks the history of English words and their usage going back as far as the 11th century, giving it some serious institutional clout. Still, none of these arbiters of language have the power of a full-on government body. They just might look and feel like regulators of language to the people who speak it, because no matter whether language regulators' goal is to keep new words out or let new speakers in, they use some of these same tools to make their pronouncements stick. Many of these regulatory agencies, like the Royal Spanish Academy or the Maori Language Commission of New Zealand, produce official dictionaries of the languages in their charge. These can be prescriptive, in that they put forth standard spellings and definitions for words that we might refer to if we're trying to use the language correctly. But these dictionaries can also be beautifully descriptive, because they create regularly updated snapshots of the words we use and how we use them at a particular moment in time. Language regulators can also influence school curriculums and evaluation standards. They can reward certain language patterns with academic success, as we saw with the Ho-Chunk Nation, or stigmatize language patterns as incorrect or unprofessional, as we saw in the US lawmakers who once sought to discourage Ho-Chunk's use. They can, like the Académie Française or Editors Canada, write open letters or issue press releases to try to persuade language users. Or they can influence how language is used in government documents. The Iceland's Personal Names Committee, for example, has a history of rejecting passports for those whose names don't conform to standardized spelling. Whereas the New York City government requires documents like public assistance and school registration forms to be available in 10 languages, from Arabic to Bengali to Haitian Creole, to promote the use of a broad range of languages in civic life. And these tools can do a lot to shape how everyday people use language. Heck, not even the Prime Minister of Canada can switch up his spelling without facing outside pressure to comply. But as linguists know, language is a wily thing that changes a little bit every time it passes from person to person. So prescribing language can only go so far. At their best, language regulators help us communicate better by, say, standardizing spelling. But they also give language room to grow, as they catalog and describe language as we use it in all its quirky, evolving glory. Academy? And some legislators have proposed oh my god. And feel like regulators